if you're going to do anything in entrepreneurship, starting your own business, sales, you're going to do anything that's outside of what's ordinarily expected of you, that rejection's part of the prescription that comes along with it. And if you don't learn how to not just overcome it, but thrive through it, then you're going to have a difficult time.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. Greetings, business stars. As an entrepreneur, you need to connect with the right people, whether you're forming alliances, want to become an expert guest, or attract the right expert guests. Well, that's why we're talking to Travis Chappell today, the founder and CEO of Guestio, as well as a podcast consultant, professional connector, and host of Build Your Network, a top 25 business podcast that is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs like you cultivate strategic and meaningful relationships. Today, he's going to share why he created Guestio and how his personal story and brand played a part in that creation and success.
And now we'd like to welcome Travis to Be Bold Branding. Welcome, Travis. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well, guys. How are you?
Very good today. Very good.
Excellent. We're excited to have you on. And I have been very excited to have you on since I learned we have one thing in common, Travis.
What's that?
We both did door-to-door sales.
Yes.
I sold vacuum cleaners.
Brotherhood, sisterhood.
Amen.
Yeah.
What did you sell door-to-door?
So you sold vacuums, you said?
I did.
Was that Kirby or something else?
That was Electrolux, the only vacuum.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Have we started a rivalry?
That is a vacuum I've not heard of.
What did you sell door to door?
I started in solar, and then I went to alarms, and then I went to water purification. So I did all three of those.
Not too far apart. The old home improvement, connector there.
Totally.
And then the other thing we have in common is basketball. Like we both love basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
So you say you spend a lot of time in pickup games, things like that. I used to do that quite a bit in college. And so
spent a lot of time playing basketball. My college basketball career ended pretty quickly after. So like my freshman year, I was basically just sitting on the bench. And then sophomore year, I got injured. And then junior year, I got surgery. And then it was all done. So.
But you still play some today?
Yeah, I do. I work at a gym called Lifetime, and Lifetime actually has a really great group of guys that come in on the weekends to play pickup. So if I'm home, which is seemingly more rare now that the world is open and I'm traveling a bunch for events and stuff again, but if I'm home and it's a Saturday, I'll be at the gym playing pickup. Yep.
I love it. I got a basketball for my 4th birthday, a basketball and a goal. And I'll never forget that day. It was just like going to Disney World for me because it just gave me an escape. Anytime I wanted to go outside, I could play basketball. So,
Totally.
All right. Well, let's get to a little bit more of your story and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah.
Was there a specific event, Travis, or even a specific person in your life that shaped who you are and resulted pretty much in doing what you're doing right now?
I'm not sure that there was one specific event or one specific person, but there have been numerous events and people along the way that have shaped me to where I am. Because I feel like I've kind of reinvented myself like 7 different times in the last 8 or 9 years. And it was always as a result of some sort of event or circumstance happening or some influence or mentorship from somebody that I looked up to. And so the answer is yes, but not just like one main thing. It was always several things that were always shifting my perspective or allowing me to step into a different role or position.
Okay.
So was there a specific theme at all throughout your life? Like, if it wasn't an event or a person, was there anything that you feel just kind of prepared you for doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like a specific thing or theme that prepared me to do what I'm doing. I guess it was just something about rejection. It's something about learning how to deal with rejection, because it's a common theme throughout everything that I do. And I think that if you're going to do anything in entrepreneurship, starting your own business, sales, you're going to do anything that's outside of what's ordinarily expected of you, that rejection's part of the prescription that comes along with it. And if you don't learn how to not just overcome it, but thrive through it, then you're going to have a difficult time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I bet that door-to-door sales, that'll get you trained up pretty quick. Tanya talked about a lot of doors get slammed in your face. That's
you get a lot of reps. You get a lot of reps in rejection when you go door to door. That's for sure. I was just talking to, do you guys know this guy? His name is Josh Peck. He was on a show on Nick called Drake and Josh that I watched growing up.
Absolutely. I've definitely heard of Josh Peck.
Yeah. So we were just chatting with him right before this interview for our show. And that was one of the things that I talked to him about, because I was like, man, I did door to door, but if there's any job in the world that might face more rejection than a door to door salesman, it's probably an actor, going all those auditions and stuff. And that was something that we talked about for a little bit, because it's just true. It's a common theme. If you're going to do anything extraordinary, rejection's going to be part of it. So learning how to deal with it and how to overcome it and how to thrive through it will set you up for success in more ways than one.
Yeah, that brings up a memory. We got a friend on the West Coast, and she was actually a news person for years and years. I think she was even an anchor at some time, and she had gone on a audition or something, and just casually had mentioned it to us. And then like 2 weeks later, we're like, "Hey, how did your audition go?" And she went, "What audition?" And we're like, "Well, didn't you go to an audition like 2 weeks ago?" "Oh, yeah. She said, I'll either hear from them or I won't. They're either my people or they're not." And we thought, man, that's such a great way to look at it,
Yeah.
It truly is.
She could care less one way or the other. Like if it was right, then it's going to be right, and she's going to do something with it. If it wasn't, she's going to find something else. And she wasn't flippant about it. She did not come across as if she was convincing herself of that. She literally felt that way, and we were really impressed with it. We thought, that's really, really a good positive outlook in any kind of sales whatsoever, because we just don't always get yeses. That's just the way it is.
That's like really the only solution to the problem is like the rejection is just a symptom of lack of self-confidence. That's all rejection is. You're feeling hurt. You're feeling slighted by rejection because you lack the self-confidence that's required to get you to the next door or the next audition or the next phone call or whatever it is. You let those, every time someone says no, you let that affect the way that you view yourself, your own identity. And so you have to be proactive about putting in more reps, putting in more work, keeping the promises you make to yourself, always making deposits into your self-confidence bank account, because every time someone tells you no, it's a withdrawal. And so you got to make sure that you're never overdrawn on that account by putting in the reps and keeping the promises you make to yourself and having a great relationship with you first, so that when somebody tells you no, it's just like they're just not my people. I'll go find someone who is.
Yep.
That's so true. And I think, obviously as we're kind of, unfolding some things here, I'm realizing that rejection, watching people go through rejection probably helped to bring about Guestio, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like every time I made a pivot, it was something to do with either my eagerness or energy about what I was trying to do, or it was that I was trying to force a square peg into a round hole. And ultimately, especially in business entrepreneurship, ultimately the market determines whether or not what you're working on is going to be accepted and paid for and can turn into a real business, especially when, like with Guestio, you're creating something new. It's like a new idea. It's not like you're not starting another digital marketing agency that competes with digital marketing agencies. You're like creating something from scratch that you're kind of just like, I don't know if people really want this or need this, but it seems like it might be a good idea. And then you throw it out there. So the only real way to know if it's going to be successful is to test it and see how it's going to go. But at some point, Kevin O'Leary always talks about this. He's like, sometimes you just got to take an idea behind the barn and shoot it, because it's, you can't try to force that peg into the wrong hole for 5 years and invest tons of money and time and energy and resources when you still don't have any proof that it's actually something that's valuable that people will see or be interested in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that from my own experience. 30 years in business for myself. I worked 6 months out of high school for somebody else, and I've been on my own ever since. But wouldn't you agree that every time that does happen, you see something come maybe to the end, or you realize, okay, this really isn't going to, you still learn something that helps you for the next thing. Like there's complete crossovers. to what you learned, even though the idea might not be one that came to fruition or might be too early in its time, which happens a lot. I still think you have these takeaways that help that next step.
Totally. Yeah. You don't fail, you learn.
Yeah.
I look at it like at bats. How many at bats how many at bats are you going to have to strike out with in order to give up on your dreams and quit pursuing what you think is your potential? And a lot of people, the answer is 1 or 3 or 5. And so I think that there's true freedom that comes in committing to hitting the home run, no matter how many at bats it takes you. And the thing about because you see some people that are, they're 21 and their first business, they become a multimillionaire, but that's not the normal thing. What's normal is it's not common for you to step up to bat your first time and knock it out of the park. You're not only it's not only likely that you're going to strike out, it's expected that you're going to strike out.
Sure.
And you're going to have to go back and try it again. But the thing is, every time you have another at bat, you learned a little bit from the last at bat, and you get practice over time. And you're like, okay, if I stand this way, if I swing this way, if I am looking at, what the pitcher's throwing at me, or if I come at it from this perspective or this angle, like I didn't do last time, I learned this other thing. Every time you step up to the plate, you're a little bit better than you were the last time. And so when you're swinging the bat for the 150th time instead of the third time, you're a lot more likely to connect. Maybe you hit a single, but then, your next at bat, you got a double, and then you got a triple. And then at some point you hit a home run. And that's, I think people underestimate the amount of reps that it takes in order to see their dreams happen, especially if their dreams are extraordinary, because that's what makes them extraordinary. If anybody could do it, then everybody would do it. But it's just not the case. Most people are not willing to put in the work. They're not willing to endure the pain of the multiple strikeouts and the embarrassment and the fear and the scarcity and the failure. They're not willing to put themselves through all of that to eventually hit the home run. So they're going to give up a long time before that. So if you want the things that those people can't have, then you have to be willing to do the things that those people will not do.
Will not do, for sure.
I love that. And our conversation just reminds me of how I must be a glutton for punishment, because I started selling vacuum cleaners door to door. Then at the same time, I was going to theater school and hearing no, no, no. And then which really, this is the first time we've ever talked about this, because, I wanted to be an actor at the same time. And I thought, well, I wasn't fit for that, and I wasn't fit for that. And finally, I just gave that up. Then I ended up in the radio world, and I got in front of then CEOs and business owners and marketing directors who slammed the door in my face. So that's really how BrandFace came to be. Is I learned that if I wanted to be viewed differently, I had to present myself differently.
Yeah,
and I think too, that's really what Guestio is about, right? It's like presenting yourself in the right way to form that purposeful connection. Tell us a little bit about what sparked Guestio. What was the first thought of I know what I need to do? Where did that come from?
Yeah, when I was doing podcast coaching, consulting, coursework, a lot of info kind of products around podcasting, helping entrepreneurs with a content strategy that attracts more clients and all that kind of stuff. When we were working with everybody, we noticed a couple of common themes that kept coming up all the time. And those common themes were that people didn't know how to get booked on shows to promote their show or their offers. And people didn't know how I was able to get in touch with the kind of A-list type of guests that I was interviewing, and A-list in the business or entrepreneurship world. And the answer to both of those questions is that it takes a lot of time, hard work, perseverance, rejection to get in touch with these types of people. And sometimes you're waiting in a queue for 9 months before you get an affirmative. And then it's another 4 months before you actually get the interview on the calendar, and then they postpone it, or they don't show up, or it's something happened. It just takes a long time. And so that's not an answer that most people like hearing, especially people that have money. And so I was like, well, the real problem is that people don't say yes to interviews all the time because they want to know that that person's not wasting their time. It's not even a matter of purely downloads. It's just a matter of, is this somebody that's quality that will actually, do the things I'm telling them to do, or they'll take my time seriously, or they'll actually prepare for this. Another interview that we did earlier today was with Ed Milet. I don't know if you guys know Ed. But he's a pretty well-known business guy, inspirational kind of thought leader, motivator. And I'm sure you guys would love his stuff if you listen to it. But he was somebody a few years ago, he's probably close to $1 billion net worth. I don't know, hundreds of millions anyway. And he speaks all over the world. And so he was one of those people that, like, when I first reached out to him, this was like 2017, 2018, he said yes to coming on my show. But it was like, but frankly, he shouldn't have. Like, my show was not really much to speak of at the time. And I was like just really getting started. But he said yes because he thought that I would be somebody that would be actually worth spending a little bit of time with and adding a little bit of value to, even though he knew that, like, he was bringing all of the assets into the relationship, that doing an interview with me wasn't really going to do much for him, but it was going to do everything for me. Even though he knew that, he was still willing to do it. And so, like, it started getting me thinking, like, it's not just a matter of downloads. It's really a matter of people just want to know their time's not going to be wasted, because people like that are really busy, that have a lot of demands on their time, don't like wasting their time, and rightfully so. And so, I was like, well, how do we make sure that it's not a waste of time? If it's totally cold and they don't know this person. And the answer to me was like, well, you pay for it. And so, I was trying to interview people from Cameo, which is another app where you can pay for, like, celebrity shout outs. Right. And so I would, like, pay for the shout out and then ask them to come on my show, but that's not what the application was built for. And so I got a lot of rejections, and I wasted some money because people didn't say yes. I got like 1 or 2 out of it, but for the most part, it was just a waste of money. And so I was like, if there was an app that existed, or a feature inside of Cameo that allowed me to interview somebody and actually, like, get the licensing right to share the content and stuff, I would pay for that. And so that's where the idea of Guestio came from. So we kind of went after a similar model, but just made it much, selling to a different customer. And then through a lot of testing, we figured out that it was actually more valuable for people to go get booked on shows so they could promote their business, their brand, their book, or whatever it is that they had going on. And so Guestio now is a lot more focused on getting people booked onto shows for the purpose of promoting their brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for really being in a good spot. I think, we talk about it all the time. The podcasting world, although if you look at numbers like 2 million new podcasts and stuff like that, and you don't look at the back end of how many of them fail, wouldn't you say it's still an extremely emerging market? And Guestio is at the forefront of that.
Totally, man.
Wave hasn't even really built the momentum that we'll see in the years to come. So congratulations, really, for a great idea. We ran into that ourselves in trying to promote our business and our brand and stuff like that. And we figured out pretty quick that you could pay a headhunter to get you on shows that rejected you when you just reached out to them. And of course, we didn't have the knowledge that you learned over time on how to connect with people, which is one of your fortes that we're really interested in you sharing about. What would you say what was the number one piece of advice that you would give to people outside of creating an account on Guestio to present themselves to people they want to get connected to?
I mean, there's really a lot there, but
it's a loaded question. I know.
Yeah.
You can take it, answer it any way you want, Travis.
Yeah, sure. Just one really, really practical thing is show up. I talk to so many people that say that they want things, and they say that they want to interview this person, or they say that they want to do business with that person or whatever. And then it's like, oh yeah, they're speaking at an, like, you quick Google search, they're speaking at an event in Scottsdale next month. Let's go. And it's like, oh, well, I got this thing going on. I can't do that because of this. And, like, it's just like, look, you either want the result and you're willing to put in the work for the result, or you're just going to come up with excuses of why it's never going to happen.
Sure.
Takeaway number one, commit.
Yeah. Commit. And commit. If the goal is worthy enough, then you should be willing to put in the work.
Right.
So set worthy goals and work to get them, and commit to making sure that they happen. And that was what it was for me. It was like, when I started the podcast, it was never like a matter of if. It was never of like I'll keep doing this if it works. So many people do that, right? They'll be like, they start this thing on the side, and they're like, if it happens to explode, then I'll go full time with it. And it's like, how often does something explode when you're treating it like when it's a half-ass effort from you? Right. How often is that going to happen? It's going to be extremely, 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 extremely rare. Most of the time, it's going to be you fighting and biting and grasping and scraping to make your dream happen. And so for me, when I started the show, it was like it's a when. It's not a matter of if. If it takes me 12 years, it takes me 12 years. If it takes me 4 years, if it takes me 1 year, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be doing this until it's successful, because I believe it to be a worthy enough goal. So that, I mean, the very first thing is just show up. The second thing I would say is don't be afraid to invest in yourself. A lot of the reasons I was able to connect with a lot of people that I know is I invested into my knowledge. I invested into my connections, my relationships. I paid money to join masterminds. I still do, to get myself purposefully into rooms of other movers and shakers and other people who are also conscious about building their network enough to be able to drop, the amount of money that it takes to get into some of these groups. And so I was always willing. I just was always willing to do that. And I think a lot of people overestimate the value of money and underestimate the value of time. And when I really started understanding that, I started kind of almost getting addicted to, paying for access, buying coaches, jumping in masterminds, essentially almost kind of paying for friendships. But it wasn't paying for friendships, it's paying for access to people and then turning that access into friendships with the ones that I really connected with. And that over time has turned into this compound effect that takes place in my network and my relationships, where now it's almost like if I want to get in touch with somebody, I can shoot a quick text to someone that I know, even if I don't know the person that I'm trying to get in touch with, and that person can connect me with somebody that can get me in touch with that person. Like it starts to compound over a long period of time. So that would be the second thing I would say, is just be willing to invest in yourself. Like these are some like more higher level philosophy ways of viewing it. And then on a practical sense, you just got to do the work. You got to send the reach outs. You got to be willing. Like, I don't know how many cold Instagram DMs I've sent where I've just like pulled up a video and sent a video to some random person that I wanted to bring on my show, I wanted to connect with. I'll do it on Twitter. I'll do it on Instagram. I'll do it on email. However I can get in touch with these people, I try my best to get in touch with them. And what happens is over time, especially, the more you purposefully do that, the more valuable your overall network becomes, which makes it easier to go connect with more people. Because I always tell everybody the number, like your network will always increase in direct proportion to the amount of value that you can add to others. And the more you increase your network, the easier it becomes to add value to the people inside of your network. Because everybody needs connections and everybody needs relationships, and everybody knows that the people that they surround themselves with will ultimately determine the version of themselves that they'll become. And so those connections start to become really valuable over time. It allows me to be able to connect with others easier because I already have other ways to add value to the people that can make those connections happen.
Yeah.
Love that a lot. I can testify the exact same from us. Every mastermind we've ever paid for, every coach that we've paid for has always been worth more than what we paid them.
He's made us better.
Every time, like every time. So we encourage that. It blows our minds, even at the no's that we get, because everybody gets no's, in our programs and things like that. But it's always paid off, and building that network is invaluable. I like everything you said.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're in it for the long term, then there's no way it doesn't pay off. It might not pay off in the 6-month period that you're working with the coach or whatever, but in like 18 months from then, you're going to get this like referral from the coach that you had a year and a half ago, who like jumps into the service offerings that you have, and you're in a new business now, and it's actually higher ticket and worth more. And then all of a sudden you make it back like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing about committing to the process. There's the same thing in entrepreneurship for me as it was in podcasting. It's just like, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know which opportunity is going to really pop off and explode and take me to the next level, but I know it's going to happen at some point. And so I'm willing to drop, scary, like amounts of money that scare me. To like the first time, like a couple of years ago, I joined a mastermind. It was $100,000 to join. And I wasn't making 7 figures that year. I was doing pretty well, but I wasn't making 7 figures. It was a large percentage of my yearly income that I'd put directly into jumping into this mastermind group. And it scared the crap out of me. But at some point, like if you know that the vision of your life is going to take you to this place over here, to whatever it is, for your business, it might be a revenue goal, right? $10 million, $50 million, or whatever. For something else, it might be, your physique or your stature or whatever it is. For me, it was the business goal. I was like, if I know that I want to be running like an 8 or 9 figure business, I have to be able to make decisions now as that person, right? You guys heard fake it till you make it. I'm not a believer in fake it till you make it.
Right.
I am a believer in be it until you become it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I love that. I like that spin.
if I want to be the guy that's making 50 million a year, I have to start adopting some of that mindset. So what would somebody making $50 million a year think about $100,000 investment into a mastermind group with a bunch of people who are doing 9 figures?
Easy.
They would think
no problem.
nothing. Yeah, easy.
Right.
Like what you want me to wire it? You want a credit card? Like, what do you want? Just take the money. It's not a big deal. It's $100,000. Who cares? It's $100,000. But like when you don't have a bunch of money sitting in your bank account, it's difficult to be like, oh, it's just $100,000 because like $100,000 is $100,000. You know what I mean? And so like I had to reprogram the way that I was thinking about it and try to put myself in the shoes of like future Travis and be like, what would future Travis do if he were in my shoes right now? And the answer was drop $100,000. And that might not be the answer for everybody that's listening, right? I'm not telling you to go be willy-nilly and don't think about it and spend your money on a bunch of stuff. Like I'm not saying that, but I am saying that you should start thinking about where you want to be and make decisions now based on where you want to go and not based on where you are currently.
I love that.
I love that so much. I got to tell a funny story. I got to do a little shout out right here. So we got this friend that was telling us a story about this other friend. And this dude drops like $325,000 to go to Super Bowl, right? Sweet, the whole thing. And so this comes out in conversation, and somebody looks at him and says, "What? I could buy a house for that." And the guy looked at him and went, "I can't." And everybody laughed, right? So the point that I'm making is he had that mindset, though. He was in that space, right? He was in the space where he knew that was a lot of money, but he also knows that, that's something that you don't do every year or whatever. It creates a memory that sticks in your mind forever. It was worth it to him. The point is not necessarily that he can't buy a house. Obviously, he can buy thousands of houses at that price range. The point that he was making is he's at that space where he doesn't buy $300,000 houses anymore. He buys $6 million houses, right? Yeah. And so, but he didn't start there. That wasn't where he started. He started on the streets of Fort Lauderdale, what I mean? So it was really more a testimony of where you could go if you have that mindset, and it backs up your point. You got to think like the people that you're aspiring to be. We always say you want to dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Yeah. Sure. And your story really resonated with me again, besides the door-to-door sales and the basketball. But it really resonated with me when you told a story. It was on another podcast, and I don't recall which one it was, Travis, but you were talking about the fact that it was the first time when you were about to throw down about $8,000 to join somebody's mastermind or go on a trip or something and join their program. And you said the biggest investment I've made up to that point was a $25 book. And it brought me back to the old days. It was just less than a decade ago that I was in that spot. And I remember sitting at my desk thinking, okay, I know I'm about to invest in this program that's going to change my life. I knew that it was exactly what I needed, that I knew the things that I had to do, but I didn't know the order or the tools. Right. And I needed somebody just to walk me through that, because I had the belief, I had the strong certainty of what I was meant to do. And it took 2 credit cards to pull together a $10,000 investment. And I didn't have money in the bank back then. This was less than a decade ago, guys. And that was the investment that I made, and I have never looked back. And we have invested and invested and invested since that time. And that's what's helped us to grow. But I appreciated you sharing that story, because the story about $100,000 investment is fantastic for a lot of people. But there are a lot of people sitting out there like I was a decade ago, and like you were whatever year that was. And they need to feel that too, that, yeah, whatever that number is, if it makes you uncomfortable, then it's probably because you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because anytime, again, if we're talking about doing something extraordinary, we're talking about doing something that's out of what normal, quote unquote, normal society would tell you to do, it's always going to be uncomfortable.
You bet.
If you haven't done it before, it's going to be uncomfortable. The first time you're doing anything is uncomfortable, but especially when it's letting go of a large amount of money that you don't necessarily have confidence that you're going to get back next month.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that kind of comes back to the idea of understanding what it buys you, and how time is more valuable than money. And that I'm almost always willing to drop money to compress the timeline
Sure.
by which it takes to learn something that could affect my bank account even more. You know what I'm saying? Like it collapses time. So like joining $100,000 mastermind and surrounding myself, this particular one's called the 100 million mastermind experience. So it's called the 100 million mastermind experience because all the instructors that come in and teach are all 9-figure plus entrepreneurs. And so if I have the ability to get direct access to 9-figure entrepreneurs who've been down the road that I'm trying to go down, and they can save me with one single piece of advice, they could save me a year of time or 3 months of testing this new ad angle or 6 months of like writing this copy that may not be very good, or like, or even saving actual money, not even just time as well. It's like, oh, well, don't hire that agency. I wasted like 80 grand with them. Don't hire them, or do this thing, or here's this person, they'll help you out for cheaper, or this person will do it for free. Whatever it is, like there's so much compression that happens by surrounding yourself with people who've been there, done that. And I'm almost always willing to throw down an amount of money to go make that happen, because I can always recoup that money. Like money is by definition replenishable. Time is not. And so like, I only have a certain amount of time to be able to make my dreams happen, to be able to live the legacy and the life that I want to be able to produce for my family and myself. And so like, I would rather spend my time worrying about, worrying about all the other things and not using that time to figure out this thing because I was too scarcity minded around money to drop a little bit to learn it faster.
I love that word too. Yeah. I mean, you got to approach it from a place of abundance, right? And I had an old mentor years ago when I first got started. He said, look, everybody pays to go to school. You can pay somebody else to teach you what they've already learned, or you can go follow around yourself and lose a bunch of money until you figure it out. And
that's exactly right.
Exactly in what you're saying.
True. So true. Yeah. Well, I want to sum this up before we just get into the final question for you. That's your personal brand, Travis. Your story is what brought you where you are today. And, we really appreciate you sharing that story because it's very inspiring. And I think it's very instructional. You've given us some points today. It's like, just go do this, this, and this, right? And we'll put all of that in the notes, but I wanted to thank you so much for being part of Be Bold Branding, because your bold brand is exactly why people are following you and why they're becoming part of Guestio, so they can take a lot of those things that you teach them and position themselves to connect with the right people to help them get farther in life as well. Help each other really is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Very true. Yep. Cultivating those genuine connections.
You bet. You bet.
Fantastic.
And
advice.
We appreciate it.
So tell prospects, how can they reach you if they have questions, or if they want to work with you, or, a little something on Guestio. Tell us what's best.
Well, first off, thank you guys so much for having me. I know that there's a bunch of different people you can bring on the show. So I always feel honored when people want to actually hear more from me rather than less from me. So I appreciate you guys bringing me on. TravisChappell.com is a great place. It's just kind of like a hub where you can go see everything else. So that's CHAPPELL, TravisChappell.com. And then if you just want to learn more about Guestio, that's Guestio.com, Guest.io, like be a guest, Guestio.com. So we have our upfront like software service, which is $97 a month. You can send out 50 pitches a month and get yourself booked onto podcasts, or get guests booked onto your podcast or whatever. But we also have a back-end agency service that we do for some of our higher ticket clients who want the same results, but they don't want to do any of the work to make it happen. And so my team steps in our agency model. We make that happen for people. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, we start around $15,000 to $20,000 and up for that. So it's more for people who have an established business. They have other marketing channels. They want to increase brand awareness and SEO and things like that by getting booked on shows. But you can email my email, travis@guestio.com. You can shoot an email over there and we'll put you in touch with somebody on my enrollment team to see if you might be a good fit for that.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Travis. You've been awesome.
Of course.
We appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Okay, guys. So if you are ready to take your bold brand to the next level, just like Travis has done, Michael and I want to help you. So go to discussyourbrand.com. You're going to fill out a short form so that we can be a little bit more prepared for that call. Choose a date and time. You'll be on the phone with one of our experts before you know it. And we're going to teach you how to build a personal brand that teaches people how to treat you, right? It's all about reciprocation, right? You treat people well, they're going to treat you well, but sometimes you need to tell them how you want them to treat you. And that's what your personal brand does. So we've got your back, guys. All you have to do is take that first step, discussyourbrand.com.
And hey, guys, it's all about prosperity. And when we say that, it's not just about money. It's like Travis parroted for us also. It's about the full 360 of an abundant life that we truly wish for each and every one of you. We know at BrandFace that prosperity favors the bold. So we say be bold, folks, especially with your personal brand. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Ms. Tanya.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time on Be Bold Branding.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.